Hello and welcome to another Underproof workshop. Underproof is a yearly initiative put on by Happy Mag and the Northern Beaches Council. It all culminates in a show where we invite 5 local bands with under 500 Facebook likes to play alongside a huge Aussie headliner. And so in the lead up to that, we've been putting on a number of online workshops that are your guide to being in a band. So whether you're from the Northern Beaches or beyond, welcome to another workshop. Today we are talking about getting physical. So in a digital world, it can kind of feel like real life, tangible objects are becoming a little bit irrelevant. We populate every corner of the digital world with Instagram pages, Facebook pages, your Spotify plays as well. But the fact is that these tangible objects, these real world representations of your music are super important still. So even if you're a young band or you're just getting started out, you do need to start thinking about vinyl, posters, merch, all this stuff. And today we're going to help you down that journey. So just to introduce ourselves, I'm Tom Cameron. I'm the music editor at Happy Mag.
And I'm Claudia Schmidt. I'm the news editor at Happy Mag.
And today we're going to be joined by a couple of guests, as always. First up, we're going to have Sindy Sinn, who's an illustrator and designer from Sydney. He's worked with the Rolling Stones, Peking Duk, Ed Sheeran, you name it. Around Sydney, you've probably seen a couple of murals of his, especially in the inner west. He's everywhere. So really looking forward to that chat with Sindy. And also we're going to be joined by Jack Rollins and Dan Wallage. Jack is the vocalist and guitarist from Sons of the East, and Dan is a guitarist as well. They're a Northern Beaches based band. They've pressed their albums to vinyl. They've done a whole lot of postering, a whole lot of merch, got a really good online store. So excited to talk to them about how they bring their band into the physical world as well. And we'll also be taking questions. So if you have any questions about anything that we talk about today, feel free to drop your question into the comments and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Great. So to start, a bit of an overview on what we're going to be talking about today. Like I said, digital stuff is really great in terms of really quick information. You know, if you need to get out a quick message about your show, you know, when your show is, you've got a new single out, all that kind of stuff. Digital's straight for that, and it's a great advertising tool. But in terms of someone who actually wants to hold your music in their hands or wear a representation of your music, that stuff is essential. Every t-shirt you sell and every album that you sell when it's a physical release think about it like a billboard that's going to be there forever. How many times is that person going to wear that shirt? How many other shows is that person going to wear that shirt to? If they love what you're doing, then you should be offering them the opportunity to show the world that. It's hugely important for you. So how do you, what are the avenues to get to this? And what sort of things can you create? Today, we're going to be talking about vinyl. We're going to be talking about merch, from t-shirts to a couple of other sort of maybe lesser done or more left field kinds of merch. We're going to be talking about postering as well. And so, Claudia, you've been in a couple of bands now. Mm-hmm. How much weight do you think musicians should be putting on this aspect of being in a band? How important is it?
I think it's pretty important. It definitely changes depending on what level your band is at. Obviously, for bigger bands, it can be a really good income avenue. And sometimes for smaller bands, it's less about the money and you might not make so much of it. But you know, what it becomes a better tool for is advertising your band and like people finding out about you. So it can be really helpful in that way. But yeah, it's really awesome to put your band's branding on something and create something. So I think it's a really awesome thing to do at all levels.
Yeah. This workshop is sort of primarily aimed at people who are maybe in their first couple of years of being in a band. That sort of stage that Claudia's just mentioned, where getting your name out there is the most important thing that you can be doing. And especially if you're in a local area such as the Northern Beaches, doing all this physical stuff is a really important way to gain some local notoriety as well. Because that's where your immediate fan base is. And, you know, if someone When something's more localized like that, it's a bit more self-serving in terms of that, the person who sees your poster and they already know you, that's them making that connection and going, oh, that's that band I like. I've just seen their poster. They must be doing well. I'm going to remember this band and I might come to their show as well. So just to start out today, we're going to talk to Sindy Sinn. Like I mentioned, Sindy is a designer and illustrator. He's worked with bands in a whole lot of different ways, from tour posters to merch to record sleeves to everything. So, he's a really good person to talk to in terms of what it's like to work with a designer, what you should expect from a designer, and also just in general, the importance of all this stuff. So thanks for joining us, Sindy. So could you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your work?
I'm Sindy Sinn, a Sydney, Newtown-based illustrator and mural artist. I run an art studio inside the Young Henry's Brewery and also do quite a lot of their artwork, as well as that I work on a lot of large-scale mural projects. It involves a lot of traveling and a lot of being up the top of scary ladders and stuff like that. With COVID, that's taken a little bit of a back step. It means I get to kind of concentrate on a lot of the digital stuff that's going on. A lot of the local mates who run bands and bars who are just trying to get through everything that's going on. Style-wise, I basically do lots of big flaming skulls and snakes and roses and all kinds of scary stuff, but I do it with a bit of a smile and a bit of a cheeky attitude that sort of softens the punch a little bit, but allows us to have some really quite aggressive artwork. It's been a lot of fun, and I really like working with the people that I get to work with, and I feel like I'm a very, very lucky boy.
Great. Now, Sindy, you've designed merch for countless bands. Is there any in particular, any experiences that stand out or anything that makes them special?
Yeah, working with bands is always really fun. I get a massive kick out of getting an email from a band that I love asking me to do some artwork for them. There's something really special about getting to sort of be involved with a band like that, like getting to put your spin on their look and their style and their attitude and making it sort of yours for a moment. But it's always really fun, and the biggest challenge is sort of matching the two aesthetics, so my style and their style, finding the happy spot in the middle. I guess I've recently worked with Mastodon and Red Fang on some shirts. I got to do some shirts on the last Ed Sheeran tour, which was pretty cool. End of last year we did some tea towels for the Living End for their regional tour, which was rad. Each one's different, and I really like working with bands. A thing that I've noticed is that the kind of bigger the band gets, the more they trust the artists. The more they trust the artist to kind of do their thing, and that's kind of very satisfying as an artist. Is to kind of it makes me feel challenged inside myself to want to produce something really cool, because they've given me the full respect, and so I get to go crazy with it. So I love working with bands, and I love getting to put my spin on it, and it's so satisfying seeing shirts that I've designed behind the merch desk, or kids walking down the street wearing it, or something like that. I grew up obsessed with gig posters and old school 80s metal posters and stuff like that, like White Zombie and all the old school Metallica posters and the AC/DC illustrations of Angus Young and all that kind of stuff. To get to be working with bands that way is very exciting. I do have a bucket list of bands that I still want to work with, and hopefully I can tick off each of those before I die.
I'm sure you will, Sindy.
We'll just see how we go.
Now, how do you think a band will know that a designer or an artist they're working with is right for them, or vice versa?
Usually there's a couple of ways that a band or an artist can tell if the other one is going to be a right fit for them straight off the bat. Usually from the first few emails or a phone call, you can kind of tell, even if it's just the tone of voice or the enthusiasm or the budget or the deadline or anything, just making sure that both parties are sort of open to hearing the other one out. I would suggest that bands do their research into artists whose style they vibe on and work with that, rather than trying to stretch an artist to meet some sort of weird expectation. That said, some beautiful things can happen when you put two opposites together, so maybe the rules don't exist, I don't know, maybe they do. My biggest piece of advice for bands working with artists would be to not overthink it, to trust the artist. to give them a little bit of freedom to kind of to flex some creativity and see what they can come up with. You know, it's important that obviously the artist has listened to the music and understands the message, but ultimately, I'd say mutual respect, and certain artists work certain ways, certain bands work certain ways, so I would encourage everyone to just do whatever makes them feel good.
Nice one, and having that trust as an artist must feel great as well. And now, in terms of the ideation process, when you start working with a band or working on a project, what does that look like?
I'd basically look at what's the message, what are we pushing? It could be something simple like what has the band got coming up? Is it a single, an album, a music video? It could be something like what's the chorus or a standout lyric in the new single that really, you know, has a really bit of bold imagery behind it. There's lots of things that you can do when kind of pulling apart all the ingredients that make a band, you know, unique. I would often have a band come to me with a brief of a couple of ideas that they want, and I would go away and brainstorm a couple and come back with a range of sketches and go, this is the one that you want, this is something that I think would be cool, and this is a couple of extra options, whether it's really edgy or kind of safe or fills a bit of a void in the merch range. Sometimes bands can come around and ask for some incredibly shocking stuff to be drawn up. I have seen some real poo briefs. However, sometimes the best way to steer a band away from that is to literally show them what it looks like. And part of my job is to hold a band's hand and make sure that we get to the best possible design and solution, and we do that together, and it's a process. I enjoy doing it, and every project's different. And every band's different, and I'll tell you what, we roll the dice every time. It's fun.
Yeah, of course. Taking every band as they come makes sense. What about the bands who want to go DIY? Are there any basic tools that you'd recommend?
For some bands, especially the DIY, punk rock, shoestring budget, get it done bands, doing it yourself is going to be the way to go. And I'll tell you what, going down that road is going to help you appreciate the whole process that goes into the shirt design hanging up on the merch rack. There's a couple of things you're going to need. I reckon you're going to need to start off with some rad artwork. Hire an artist that you like the style of and you respect. Get some artwork that you think's cool, or do it yourself. Get some crayons and have a little craft afternoon. Once you've got your design, you're going to need to screen print that onto some t-shirts. There are lots of sites and tutorials online that will show you how to screen print a shirt. I would suggest starting simple with just like a one color design, whether it's white on black or black on white, and just sizing it up right, getting it bang in the center and giving that a crack. And the third part that you're going to need is some good quality shirts, and I would suggest not skimping on this. Getting something good quality like an AS Color or a Gildan shirt will be enough to get you started, but you want to avoid the scratchies or the shrinkies. So you want to give your fans and your customers something that they're proud to wear and they're excited to wear, and it's not going to be sort of like a one-time wear or something that they regret purchasing. You want to give them a good quality shirt. No one expects a band to stay up all night stitching their own bloody shirts. So get something good quality, print some cool artwork on it, and sometimes with the artwork it doesn't even have to be, sometimes the best thing a band can do is literally just like scribble something on a napkin or scribble something on a tea towel, or hire an artist to literally say, how fast can you design us a t-shirt in 20 minutes? And then film the process, make a game out of it. Like if you're going to DIY that stuff, there's a good story behind that, and you should be capturing that process and sharing that content with your fans so that they do appreciate that it's DIY. It's the kind of thing that a fan would walk down the street proudly that they're supporting a local band who are hustling so hard to get it done. I would suggest the DIY thing does have a scaling problem. So after a point, you're going to get very sick of printing shirts, and you're going to need to hire a screen printer. And there are lots around. Wherever you are, there's definitely someone who can screen print a shirt within half an hour. Here in Sydney, I use IL6 quite a lot. There's lots of really great printers around. The whole process of starting a band and building the merch line and building the artwork is really exciting. And sometimes the DIY route is a really nice way to appreciate all of that. That said, if you regret everything, give me a call. We'll help you out. We'll get you set up.
That's amazing. Thanks, Sindy, for that really awesome answer. That's super helpful. And for all the artists who are watching who may feel a bit overwhelmed, they've been doing tees by themselves for a time, or they've been designing their own merch, please remember that there are a lot of awesome artists out there like Sindy or people who are less established who are out there to help you take the load off and produce some really awesome work.
Thanks so much for your time, Sindy.
Catch you later.
Thank you very much to Happy Mag for having me. I'm Sindy Sinn. See ya.
So following on from talking to Sindy, we're going to start our talk about merch, and we're going to start in the obvious place, tees. So we're talking about t-shirts, as in, from everything that's an actual t-shirt to a long sleeve, the basic piece of merch that you get people to wear. Merch and tees especially will be your best friend starting out. If you get your hands on a great design, it's going to be some healthy pocket money. And if you sell a few of these, and a lot of these are to give out as well to close friends and people that you work with, it's going to help build some local notoriety. So there are two ways to do tees or other similar bits of merch. You either print them yourself or you get a screen printer to do it for you. Now, we were just talking about this before. Have you ever printed any tees yourself or any merch?
I've never screen printed tees. I've had them printed before by outsourced it to a company, and that was really easy. But I've screen printed EP covers we made them out of cardboard EP cases, and we screen printed them with paint. And it was fun. It was time consuming, and we had to have a whole production line, but that's kind of part of it, and it definitely, making something yourself gives it that kind of really personal, intimate touch, which I think fans are really, really into. So yeah, I think printing yourself is a really cool idea.
Definitely, and especially if that's kind of the ethos of your band. As Sindy said, if you're doing these things yourself, it's a good story and it's a good thing to share. People really respect that. People really respect the DIY ethos that a lot of bands have. And if you're screen printing, make sure you take a couple of photos, take a video here and there, just show that process, because people who haven't seen it will be interested in it. And hey, it'll probably help sell a couple of those shirts as well.
Absolutely.
And looking at the cost of those, we're going to do cost for tees, but not so much everything else, because this is kind of the basic level. And this is coming from a friend who's screen printed his own shirt many, many times now. So blank shirts, when you order quite a few of them, will end up costing you about $7.50. The screen that you'll need to do for one per design will be about $50, and you'll need to buy about $50 worth of paint, and that will get you enough paint for about 200 shirts as well. Some quick tips on that. Obviously, if you're doing this yourself, you don't want to do a really complicated design. And if you're screen printing, you can only literally print with one color. So that's something to think about, whether you're designing it yourself or you're talking to a designer. One color, and then if you're screen printing elsewhere. Depends on who you're going to, but those specifications should be available in terms of what you need to do with color, with size, all of that. Really important. It can be a bit of an awkward situation if you get it wrong.
Yeah.
And once you've sort of got this, it's important to mention that a merch desk at your show is kind of a really great opportunity to meet and chat with a few new fans. It creates a zone where people are confident to talk to you, and it's a great excuse for you to let them know that you've got something else coming up, that you've got an album that's due out whenever, or that you've got another show coming up here. I don't know, you'd probably say the same, in that merch desk scenario is kind of one of the most face-to-face places that you'll meet with fans.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely having merch is a great way to make sure that you're at the merch desk afterwards. And I remember back in the days when we were playing shows so long ago, always whenever you finish, it's really great to head straight over to the merch desk, because people inevitably come up, and like you said, it's a really great chance to talk to people. Yeah,
for sure. And for tips on designing your own merch, listen back on that interview with Sindy, or check out our last workshop. It's called Working with Others. We'll drop a link below. We talked a bunch about where and how to find designers or photographers that you might want to work with, how to know if one of these people suit your vibe and understand where you're going, where you're coming from. And the other thing we always say is, you as an emerging musician, if you have any friends who are emerging designers, merch is a great thing to work on with them. So, reach out to them, work on something together. If it works, it'll work really well. If it doesn't, they might just not be the best fit for you. They might do some amazing work, but it might not suit your band, and that's okay. So if you're just joining us, we're talking about getting physical. We're talking about everything a band needs in the physical world, from merch to vinyl to local postering to more. This is an Underproof workshop, which is put on by Happy Mag and the Northern Beaches Council. And if you have any questions, just drop them in the comments. We'll get back to you. Sweet. So now that we've covered tees and clothing, let's move on to some of the less common merch that you'll see. But all of this stuff is really a great idea as well. So other apparel is really important, and this can be totes. Totes are huge at the moment. Totes are something like a shirt that actually gets used a lot. So, there's quite a bit of bang for your buck in terms of people wearing them around, I think. Beanies, I don't know, what are some other... I've got a pair of lime cordial socks.
Yeah, I was going to say socks.
Socks are always great, and you might not get many eyes on them.
Yeah.
But, people respect a new pair of socks always.
Yeah.
I think the design really comes first. If you're working with someone or you're working with a friend and you go, hey, this would look awesome on a pair of socks, then go for it. It doesn't need to be designed for the t-shirt in mind. Some of this stuff has done really well for bands in the past. When I say smaller stuff, I'm talking about stickers and badges and that kind of thing. A lot of people give this a miss, but I actually think it's hugely important, and I think you'll agree here. We were talking about patches before.
Yeah. An old band of mine made patches, and I actually I do love t-shirts, but I love small merch. I think it's really cool. Obviously, it's like, yes, you've got less of the kind of exposure element of it because people aren't necessarily walking around with it on, although badges more so. But I think, they're often a lot cheaper to make than, smaller merch is often a lot cheaper to make than something like a t-shirt. So it can be a good way to start out with merch, and it's just fun, like having something little with your band logo or whatever it is on there. I think patches were really cool to make. And stickers can both be made really cheap as well, so you can print quite a lot. And that's just a thing. You're not necessarily selling them, you're just giving them out to people at your shows. And that's a connection that you forge with somebody. I don't know, my laptop's covered in stickers, and I'm sure a lot of other people's will as well. All that stuff is really great, and it's just another connection that you can make with somebody, and cheaper than a lot of these other things that we're talking about. Yeah, actually, I think I've never made stickers, but I think they're a really good one because, there's been bands like, say, Racket, their stickers are everywhere, and you'll never forget that band name. And I think that's a really important point as well, just to make sure that your branding and your name, whatever your design is, make it really clear across your merch and consistent. So that people really know when they look at a sticker or a shirt or whatever that it's your band. It can still be cool, but just make sure that it's got your kind of stamp on it, so it's really clear. The other thing is, and this probably comes a couple of years down the line, is one-offs. And when I say one-offs, I mean everything from signed posters to test pressings of your vinyl or limited editions of certain pieces of merch. They're not necessarily one-offs, but they're anything that's a limited release or special for some reason. This stuff is really useful just historically, having the test pressing of an album that someone has loved for 10 years becomes a really amazing thing. These things I often see being auctioned off in charity events and raising a bunch of money for a really good cause, which is great as well. When bands get secondhand clothing and print limited edition, each item is one of a kind. DMAs. Yeah, DMAs did this very early into their career. They bought a bunch of, I think it was denim jackets from op shops around the area and just spray painted their logo onto the back of those. And I still see a couple of those around. They're very much collector's items now. So cool. Anything that,
makes that thing special is something that people really connect with. And, you know, with those, it's kind of in the idea, so you do need to have a think about it. Another good example actually came from last year's Underproof show. Last year, Hockey Dad were the headliners, and it was a sold-out show with 800 tickets. And they actually made a shirt that had Hockey Dad, the venue, DYPCYC, and the date on it. And so it was like, you need to buy this tonight because it is a reminder of this special gig that happened tonight. And I think they sold about 400 shirts, which is a pretty penny for the band. And it's them taking a one-off show that's a bit special to all of the people in attendance and making something that celebrates that. So one-offs can be really, really special and something to consider for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, one other thing which I haven't seen much of, I don't know if you have, but one of my old bands printed posters, but they got like an artist to design this really beautiful, it was almost more like an artwork, but just with like, I think it was his band name and like the album name or something. And I think he just gave it away at the shows. But yeah, it was like a really cool merch idea. Which I guess with smaller bands, I don't really see around much, but it's like, you know, everyone went home with something that they could put on their wall that was like, not a tour poster, but just something really, really beautiful. So I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah, cool. A quick word on postering. Postering for me is, you know, when I say postering, this is when you have a gig or an album coming up, you either engage a company who does this or you do it yourself and create a couple of posters that live around your local area. And basically it's a real world way of advertising what you've got going on. It's a sure way to get more people to your shows or create a bit of buzz around a release, but it can be expensive. So like vinyl, you need to know that you're at least breaking even with this one. Often it's more with people who are assigned to a label or have some degree of management backing that this will come through. But if you want to save money, and in the early days, if you have a very local audience and you know that there's a certain area that you want to get some people knowing about your show in, you can do it yourself. A really great way to do it is talk to a local cafe or a news agent or somewhere that you're familiar with and they know you. Ask if they can put a poster up, and 9 times out of 10 they'll say yes, and they're happy to do that as well. Now we are going to go to Sons of the East. I mentioned we have Dan and Jack from the band coming in to talk about all this physical stuff.
Hello.
Welcome, Dan and Jack.
Let's just start off with an introduction from you guys.
Jack and Dan here from Sons of the East, 2/3 of Sons of the East, from Sydney's northern beaches.
Nice. Now, how important do you think it is for a band to have a physical presence when it comes to things like postering and merch in their early days?
It's very important, we think, to have some physical awareness of the band's name out and around your local area when you first start coming up. I mean, it's all about brand awareness, I guess, these days, especially with such a saturated music market. So having your name on posters and gig guides and little music venue headboards and stuff, it's very important. Because you want that kind of grassroots, that foundation of fans from your local area to really get behind you, get that ball rolling as you're starting out.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, as a kind of rookie band, very important.
You want to get your name out there as much as you can. So I think word of mouth and t-shirts, posting, all that kind of stuff is great. Because when you're starting out, especially, you just want to get your name out there, get people hearing your music, get people talking about you and the band, and
they're seeing your name around town.
Yeah.
Very, very good.
That's great.
Word of mouth is very, very important for marketing.
Nice. Brand awareness is a really good way to put it. Now, a lot of people can second guess some of the more expensive investments like postering or vinyl. Do you think there's a right time for a band to start looking at these options too?
I think the right time to start thinking about a bigger physical investment, it's quite hard to say, but I think it just comes down to releases. You obviously see bands when they're releasing albums, that seems to be a time in which something like a vinyl is really comes into play. I mean, it's getting a vinyl made seriously exciting. Getting those first couple of boxes shipped and then cracking them open and seeing your first ever vinyl is really, really special. But I think it comes down to your release and what the strategy is of that release. But I know especially when you're touring, that's a great time to have vinyl. We always make sure we've got a lot of vinyl made when we're touring. And then obviously with web stores these days, everyone loves online shopping. So I think every way you can get your music out there is really, really important.
Good call on having merch before going into a tour. The more you have, the better, I reckon. And how have you typically gone about finding the right photographer or designer for these projects?
We've personally been really lucky that it's just been through either friends, family, just reaching out to other people. And we've now worked with the same photographers for years now. Our guy, Pat O'Hara, very close friend of ours now, he's been touring with us for the past 4 or 5 years. He spent 3 months in us with Europe, which was just unbelievable, and we've done heaps of work. He's done a few of our album covers, and then another close friend of ours, Will Hazelman, he's done a lot of work for us as well. Yeah, so we've been really fortunate to work with these guys, and we absolutely love working with them. So that's been great. But I think you just speak to other bands, you find out who they work with. Obviously, social media now is a great way to find new photographers, new designers, and I think you just want to have that kind of relationship where you're on the same page, and because it just makes life so much easier when you're on the road and you've got people with you, taking photos, getting video content and everything. It's great, especially in this day and age where so much promotion and everything is online. So.
Absolutely. We actually had a great chat with Pat O'Hara last week. So anyone who wants to find out more about Pat and all the great bands he works with, we'll drop a link to that session as well. And lastly, guys, a fun one. Do you have a favorite piece of merch, a poster or a record sleeve from over the years?
How could I forget Deja Vu, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Beautiful record. Inspired Sons of the East over the years. Some great tunes on here. Kids, if you walk on down to your local record store, definitely want to pick up one of these. This will give you the hot vibes of some ride music. I mean, the cover, it's a bit to be desired. I think they only have one shot of the photos. The blokes have got some ugly face on there, tell you what. Good music though. Great record. Deja Vu. Yeah. And how can I forget Sons of the East, latest record from last year, the Burn Right Through. It's a little one. How big's this one?
Small.
It's a small one, but it's a good one. This kind of came out when we were on tour last year in Europe, so it kind of holds a little special place in our hearts. We did like a 48-day tour around Europe, and it was just crazy. And getting to play some of the songs from this record made it super special for us. So every time I see this or one of the songs comes on around the place, definitely kicks back a few memories. And definitely the artwork we've done here is particularly proud of as well. Put together by Will Hazelton and Tom Schwager. So
that's awesome, guys. Thanks heaps for sharing with us.
Thanks heaps, guys. See ya.
We'll hopefully see you all soon when we're all back able to play gigs and tour again, hopefully in the near future. Appreciate you having us. See you later.
See ya.
All right, now we're going to talk a bit about vinyl. Vinyl is a really important touchstone for a lot of bands. Holding that vinyl in your hands for the first time is definitely a really special moment, as Dan and Jack just said. And not to mention, vinyl sales have actually seen a really steep rise in the last few years, and there's not really any signs of it slowing down. Selling vinyl at shows gives fans sort of something that they can take home afterwards and replay the night. If they're really blown away by a show, that's the moment that they're going to buy a record. And also, if you set up pre-orders for an album, vinyl is a really great indicator of how something is going to go. So it's an important piece of data as well. So where and how do you press a record? One of the only places in the Southern Hemisphere to press vinyl is Zenith Records, which is based down in Melbourne. They've pressed pretty much all your favorite Australian records in the past 10 years, and hopefully yours will be next. They're a lovely crew and will help you with any questions that you may have. And what will you need before pressing vinyl? It's a bit more of a process that you need to go through in terms of who you're working with and what you need to get ready. It's different to putting something on Spotify in that way. So at the very basic level, what you'll need is a design that goes beyond the cover art. So you need to start thinking about things like a jacket and a sleeve design. You might want an insert, what's going to be printed on the label in the middle of your record. Everywhere that you press vinyl will have a template for this. Again, it's something that you theoretically could do yourself, but it's definitely worth having a designer's eye on something like that. And also you will need to do masters for your vinyl. We've talked about mixing and mastering in one of the other workshops before, and it's kind of the final process you do before your songs are released. But a master for vinyl is different to the master that you'll need for your digital releases. So again, talk to your engineer and they'll be able to provide you with that. And if you're just joining us, we're entering into just the last section of our Underproof workshop on getting physical. We're talking all about merch, postering, all the stuff in the physical world that makes people remember your band. If you have any questions about anything that we've said, feel free to drop them in the comments and we'll get back to you shortly. So we're just going to finish up on a bit of doing stuff in the real world. It's actually meeting people. Disclaimer, this is harder at the moment due to the restrictions on live music. Meeting people at your shows is quite difficult now with social distancing in place, and also the fact that only about a quarter of the people who can come to your shows are allowed to at the moment because of regulations. But another very important way to bring your band and your project into the physical world for people is meeting those people. So Claudia, you've kind of talked about meeting people at your shows before, whether it's fans or other people in music or industry and stuff like that. So what kind of relationships have come out of those moments for you?
Definitely, I've met photographers and designers and artists who I've later collaborated with. And, also have met fans who have then come along to lots of gigs, or met other musicians who I've collaborated with musically. But I think definitely being open to meeting people at gigs or online now, I guess, is the alternative, is a really awesome thing, because you never know where that relationship might lead and who does what in their spare time. I've collaborated with a lot of people in terms of making merch and recording and taking photos and videos and all that. And you never know who you're going to meet and how amazing they might be.
Definitely. In terms of meeting your fans, it's a great opportunity to sort of forge a relationship that might be a really long relationship if they're a really big fan of you. How many stories have you heard about so-and-so met so-and-so backstage at a show one time? Those people do remember those moments. It was really special to a lot of people. In terms of meeting people beyond your fan base, like Claudia said, you really do not know who is going to be at a show. You might meet people from a record label. You might meet like-minded creatives who you can collaborate with on a later date. You might meet recording engineers. Definitely take a moment. And this doesn't only apply to your shows, is an important disclaimer here. The more that you're out there and you're supporting other bands, being back in that scene and meeting the other people who are a part of it is hugely important. And like we kept saying, you never really know what's going to come out of it. So get yourself out there. And that's kind of all we had for today. Like I said, this has been our last Underproof workshop. Today was getting physical. We've been talking about merch, postering, pressing vinyl, everything your band needs to do to get into the physical world. If you have any questions, we will answer them for about 24 hours after the stream has ended. But for now, thanks for joining us. You can find out more about Underproof via the link in the comments, and look out for more news on Underproof soon. So thanks for joining us again. I'm Tom Cameron.
I'm Claudia Schmidt.
See you later.